Before the break, we started a bigger project in Power Pivot. We imported 2 databases. The first database consists of 7 tables and some relationships. The second database product category consists of 1 single table with an imported 2 Excel files, geography and stores. After bringing all the data under 1 single roof, we switched to the diagram view by clicking on Diagram View on the right side of the Home tab. We created relationships. There are 2 ways of creating relationships. Method number 1 is by drag and drop. Method number 2 is by going to the Design tab and click on Create Relationships. We select the 2 tables. We click on the matching field and then hit OK. After creating the relationships, we went back to Data View, and in Data View, I explored the tables and then I clicked on the Sales table. In the Sales table, I created an entire column having the same calculation. In Power Pivot and in Power Business Intelligence in general, we don't have to copy any formula. And to create a calculation, we refer to the column header, the field name. A field name is typed in square brackets. So I created a simple calculation in a new column in which I subtracted the return amount and the discount amount from the sales amount. When I hit enter, I got an entire new column of calculations having almost 2.3 million calculations. And then I right-clicked on the column header and renamed the column Net Sales. Now I want to create a second calculation in another column. Then I click under Add Column, and to create a new calculation, I type an equal sign. You will see the equal sign in the formula bar. What if I subtract the cost of the products from the net sales? That should return the gross profit. So I type an opening square bracket and I select net sales either by double clicking or by hitting tab. And from the net sales I want to subtract the gross profit, and I type a minus sign, an opening square bracket, and I subtract the total cost. I select total cost and then I hit tab. Subtracting the total cost from the net sales, that returns the gross profit. When I hit enter, another 2.3 million calculations will be processed. So I hit enter. The progress bar in the lower right corner shows me when it will be processed. And here you go. I was able to create a new column for the gross profit. We need to rename this column, and we rename it by right-clicking and select Rename Column. I'm going to rename it Gross Profit. and I would have created another calculated column. You might have noticed that the calculated columns differ in color from the regular column coming with the original source data. They are black in color. It's a way by which Power Pivot tells us that this is a calculated column. Were you able to create the gross profit? Now I want to look at another table, the products table. So let's have a look at the products table. We have so many products. And if you look at any one of the products, here is the product name. I have a column for the product name. And every product belongs to a bigger entity, which is the product subcategory. Should you wish to know the name of the subcategory, then you go to the product subcategory column. So this product belongs to product subcategory, but I don't have the name of the subcategory. I just have a number corresponding to the subcategory, number 22. Should you wish to know the name of the subcategory, then you have to keep this number in memory and then click on the product subcategory table, scroll down to number 22, and it's computer accessories. And because each subcategory belongs to a bigger entity, which is the product category, then if you want to know the name of the category, then you grab this number, the number of the product category, number 3. I don't have the name here, and I go to another table, which happened to be another database. I look at number 3, and the name of the bigger entity, the category, is computers. What a hassle. I go back to the product table, and I wish to have the product subcategory name and the product category name in the same table, table products. And to do that, I'm going to create another calculated column. To get the product subcategory, I have to look at this number, the product subcategory number, and then travel through the relationship that we created to the product subcategory table and grab the related subcategory name. And I will be doing the same for the category name. I will travel through the relationship and get the related category name. But I'll be doing this inside the product table. To create a calculated column, I scroll to the right. I select any cell under Add Column. And here I want to create a formula. I type an equal sign. And because I want to go through the relationship and get the name of the subcategory, I want to get the related subcategory to this specific product. Then I'm going to use a DAX function to do that. DAX function can calculate across multiple sources. DAX stands for Data Analysis Expression, and the one I'm going to use right now is one of the most popular DAX function that works exactly like a VLOOKUP function, but it's much more simple because it works through the relationship and it will get the related subcategory name. What's the name of this DAX function? Related. So I type related. I can see it in the IntelliSense list, and I hit the tab key. And look at the beauty of this function. Look how beautiful DAX functions are. What do you want to do? What do you want to bring back? It puts in the IntelliSense list all the field names from all the tables having relationships with the product table. So you don't have to memorize anything. I want the product subcategory name. So I select the product subcategory name. I hit the tab key and I close the bracket for the related function. As simple as this. Although it's very simple, but it's extremely powerful. When I hit enter, it will return the product subcategory name for each record. Were you able to create the first DAX function? Let's rename this column. Right click and rename. I want to rename it product subcategory. Now I have the product subcategory, but I also want to bring the product category. I want to bring the category name. So I'll be creating another DAX function. I navigate to the right. I select any empty cell under Add Column. I type an equal sign. And then the name of the function is related. I type related. I hit the tab key. And here I want this time the category name. And I select product category name. And I hit tab. Note that I have the name of the table, the containing object, and then the name of the field. I close the bracket for the related function, and I hit enter. So I have the product subcategory, and I have the product category, and I can rename the field as we did before. Right click, rename, product, category. Because the result comes in an entire column, we call it a calculated column. Later on, we'll be creating a calculated field, which is a different type of calculation. Then you missed some relationships. Everything is based upon relationships. Did you create the relationships? Okay, let's check together. I go to Diagram View and I click on the Design tab. I click on Manage Relationship, and these are the relationships I have. I have a relationship between the product table, the product subcategory, and the product category. This is Table 1. Table 2. Do you have this relationship? And I have another relationship between the product table and the product subcategory table. These are the two relationships that you should have for the functionality to work. Okay, fix it. To create a relationship, click on Create Relationship, select the two tables and the matching field. So if I select Product and I select Product Subcategory, then the matching field will be the product category key. Also, if I hover over the line, it will highlight the matching field. Product subcategory. And then if I hover over this line, let's bring the product category here to make it more clear. When I hover over this line, it highlights the matching field. Product category key, and here product subcategory key. I go back to the Home tab and click on Data View. We created relationships before creating the calculated columns using related functions. But I have a question for you. Don't you see a logical relationship between the biggest entity, the category, and then the next level, the subcategory, and the next level, the product name? This is what we call a hierarchy. A hierarchy is extremely useful in business intelligence because it enables us to create internal relationships. Internal relationships are relationships between fields in the same table: category, subcategory, and product name. So it's a structure that can be collapsed or expanded, and it helps us a lot in our analysis. So I have a product subcategory and a product category, and I want to create a hierarchy. What columns for product subcategory? Okay, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. Well, it's great to have assistance. Product category key. Well, we have to share my paycheck. Okay. Let's go to diagram view. And in diagram view, I want to create a relationship between fields in the same table. This is what we call a hierarchy. And because I have lots of fields in the product table, I want to open a bigger view of this table. I want to maximize this view. So I click on the upper right corner, the maximize icon. Please click on maximize. It just opens a bigger view of the same table. And now I want to create a hierarchy. And as I said, a hierarchy is an internal relationship. To create the hierarchy, I scroll down, and here are the two new calculated columns that we created using the related function, product category and product subcategory. I start selecting the higher level in the hierarchy, product category. And then I press Control and select product subcategory. I then press Control and I want to bring the product name, but the product name is at the top of the list. So I press Control and click on product name. So here I have product category, product subcategory, and up at the top I have product name. I want to create a hierarchy of these three fields. So I right click and I select Create Hierarchy. When I select Create Hierarchy, a new hierarchy is being created. I'm looking at the progress bar in the lower right corner. And when I scroll down, here is the new hierarchy. It has a temporary name, like when you create a document in Word, it has the name, a temporary name, document 1. This is hierarchy 1. I'm going to name it categories. And I want to give a user-friendly name for the different fields inside the hierarchy. So I select product category, right click and rename, and let's make it category only. I select the next one, right click and rename, and I want to rename it subcategory. And for the last one, I'll name it product. So I right click, rename, and let's name it product. So my hierarchy consists of category, subcategory, and product. And I named the hierarchy. Look at this icon. This is a different icon denoting that this is a hierarchy, and I named it categories. Were you able to create this hierarchy? There are so many hierarchies, and hierarchies are very useful in our analysis. So let's think of a geographic hierarchy. If you think of the whole world as the biggest entity, the world is divided into continents. Each continent is divided into countries. Each country is further subdivided into states or provinces, and in each state we have multiple cities. Then we have the whole world, we have continents, then the next level is countries, the next level is state or province, the next level is city. So I want to create another hierarchy. To close this window, I click on the upper right corner, the Restore Down button, and I want to go and create a second hierarchy, and I'll be doing this in the geography table. And because the geography table has lots of fields, I can't see all of them. Then I click on the Maximize button. I select the fields in the order I want. So the top level is country. I press Control and click on State Province. You know what? I made a mistake. The top level is continent. And then I press Control and click on country. And then I press Control and click on province. Continent, country, province or state. To create a hierarchy, we right-click and select Create Hierarchy. The hierarchy is created. I want to give it a nice name. Let's say Geo Group. And I hit enter. We can rename the members of the hierarchy. So the first one, right-click and rename. And I'll rename it Continent. For the next one, let's make it Country. And for the last one, let's make it Province. If you want, you can make it State. Right-click and rename. And I'll make it State. And I created a second hierarchy that lives in the Geography table and consists of 3 levels: Continent, Country, and State. No, I made it, Linda, I made it just 3 levels. If you want, you can make it 4 levels, include more levels in your hierarchy, but for this exercise, I'll make it 3 only. I click in the upper right corner and click Restore, and I would have created my hierarchy. I want to give you the flavor of what we did. We didn't finish the project, but I want to give you at this point the flavor of what we did. What's the reason of what we are doing? We want to get business questions. We want to analyze our business. So to wrap up, I'll go to the data view. In the sales table, I created 2 calculated columns, the net sales and the gross profit. In the product table, I created 2 DAX functions, one for the product subcategory and one for the product category. And then we switched to diagram view and we created 2 hierarchies. One for the products, we called it the categories, and another one in the geography table, and we called it GeoGroup. With the millions of transactions I have a business question, and the regional manager is asking, I would like to know the gross profit generated by each continent. That's very easy to answer. So I click on Pivot Table. I'm going to create my pivot table in a new worksheet. Now you see the importance of changing the layout, because here we have so many tables and in each table we have so many fields. So I'm going to change the layout by clicking on Tools and select the second option. That's much better. If I click on Geography table and I expand it, I will see 2 types of fields. I have more fields. These are the default fields. And I have the hierarchy, GeoGroup. I just want to use the hierarchy. So I drag GeoGroup to the row label. Here is my hierarchy. The top level is the continent. And my manager wants to know the gross profit for each continent. The gross profit lives in the sales table. So if I expand the sales table and I go down The last field is gross profit. All what you need to do is to drag the gross profit to the values. And here you go. I have the gross profit generated by Asia, by Europe, and North America. So what's the importance of the hierarchy? Well, if you want to drill down to the country level, click on the expand symbol for North America, the plus sign. And now I have the gross profit for Canada. I have the gross profit for the United States. Yeah, but I'm specifically interested in one of the provinces where I live, in Ontario. Then I drill down furthermore, I granularize my data. I expand Canada, and here is the gross profit generated by the province of Ontario. We are summarizing 2.3 million records in just few rows by combining the functionality of hierarchies with the functionality of calculated columns. Isn't that spectacular? Let's go to the next level, and we'll make it mind-blowing this time. I want to go back to Power Pivot, so I click on Manage. We previously created some calculated columns. What does it mean, a calculated column? A calculated column simply means I'm getting a result, I'm getting a value for each one of the records. But just imagine, in the sales table, what if I ask you, what's the gross profit of this company? Just a question. What's the gross profit of this company? Then anyone will say, I go to the gross profit column and I will be adding all the numbers. Yes, I do have 2.3 million number. I want to add up all these numbers to get the sum of the gross profit. I want to get the sum of the gross profit. Then I add all the numbers in the gross profit column. Okay, another question. What's the sum of the net sales amount? What's the total net sales for the entire company? Very easy. I just need to add up all the numbers in the net sales column. And the result will be one single number. Maybe it's 7 or 8 digits, but it's one single number. And this is what we call a calculated field. A calculated field returns one single number. I can define it in a different way. To create a calculated column, my calculations work horizontally for each record. To create a calculated field, my calculation works vertically using all the values in one of the columns or in one of the fields. I want to calculate the sum of the net sales. And to calculate the sum of the net sales, I'll be creating a calculated field. We call it a measure. Measures are created in the grid below the table, and we call it the calculation area. We have millions of cells. Any cell will work. If you don't see the calculation area, then all what you need to do is to click to the right side of the Home tab and click on Calculation Area. It's a toggle button, one click to hide, one click to bring it back. This is called the calculation area. So a field, a calculated field, is also called a measure. A calculated field or a measure returns one single number. Measures or calculated fields are created in the calculation area. So I want to create my first measure that calculates the sum of the net sales. But hold on a second. not only I want to calculate the sum of the net sales, I want to calculate the sum of the net sales based upon a condition in a different table. This different table might come from a different source, maybe an Access database, maybe a CSV file, maybe Google Analytics, maybe from the web. It doesn't matter, so long as all the tables live in the same data model and we have relationships created, that doesn't matter. So let's understand what we want to do. If I go to the channel table, this multinational company is selling the product through different channels. We have the store channel, we have the online channel, we have the catalog channel, and we have the reseller channel. These are the 4 channels through which we are selling our products. I go back to the sales table. So what do you want to do, Nabil? I want to calculate the net sales, which is this entire column. I want to calculate the sum of the net sales based upon a condition in the channel table. I want to calculate the net sales for one single channel as if I want to filter the net sales column for one single channel. Let it be the store channel. So I'll be creating a calculated field in the sales table. I navigate it to the left and I select any cell. You can select any cell you like, but make sure you are in the sales table. My measure, my calculated field lives in this table. To create a measure, select any cell in the calculation area of the corresponding table. I'm creating a measure in the sales table. So I select a single cell in the calculation area and I start typing the name of the measure. What do you want to name it? Let's name it store sales. You start typing immediately store sales. That's the name of the measure, store sales. And when I type, whatever I type appears in the formula bar. And because this is the name of the measure, I want to tell Power Pivot that this is just a name. And to do that, I type a colon. When I type a colon, that's the same concept used in databases. Anything to the left side of the colon is considered the name of the field. And then I start creating my calculation. Store sales, colon, and to create a calculation, we need to type an equal sign. What do you want to calculate? I want to calculate the net sales, but I want to filter them based upon a condition in the channel table. I want to calculate the net sales based upon a condition in the channel table. So what's the name of the function? That's the second most popular DAX function that will calculate the net sales based upon a filter in the channel table. What's the name of the function? Calculate. So I type calculate and I hit the tab key. If you are familiar with creating functions in Excel, you know that the screen tip is very helpful. The first argument in the screen tip says, what's your expression? My expression is a sum function that will sum the net sales column. So I type sum and I hit tab. What do you want to sum? I want to sum the net sales. And because I'm creating my calculation in the sales table, and I need the net sales field from the same table, I can immediately type a square bracket and I get the list of fields from which I select net sales and I hit tab. Of course, I need to close the bracket for the sum function, so I close the bracket. Sum of the net sales. Very simple. To move to the next argument, I type a comma, like in Excel. When I type a comma, look at this. It says filter. I want to sum the net sales, but filter down to the numbers corresponding to the store channel. Where can I find the store channel? In another table called the channel table. Then I type C for channel, and I can see all the fields from the channel table. I want the channel name. I hit the tab key. So for the filter, I want to filter based upon a specific channel. The name of the channel is store. Then I type equal, and in double quotation, I type the value that I'm looking for, which is store. So the second argument is the filter. The filter is in the channel name, in the channel table, and the specific channel I'm looking for. So I type equal, store in double quotation, and I close the bracket for the calculate function. I close the bracket for the calculate function, et voila. I hit enter. It's processing a very complex calculation, and I got the result. I can expand this column, and that's the total of net sales for the stores channel. I want to format my measure. Formatting a measure is extremely useful because if I reuse this number in lots of calculations, then it will carry the formatting with it. How do I format it? Then on the home tab, I have a dollar symbol. I click on the down arrow for the dollar symbol and I select English, United States. And here is the number, nicely formatted with a dollar symbol, 1,000 separators, and 2 decimal places. Were you able to create the calculated column or the calculated field or the measure? Well, your calculation looks correct. Store sales equal calculate sum of the net sales, close bracket, channel name, store. I don't see a problem with your calculation. You can delete it and recreate it. I don't see any problem with your calculation. Oh, excellent. Linda always comes for rescue. I don't know how can I deliver courses without Linda. You have 2 opening brackets. Okay, from now on, anyone who has a question, you can address it to Linda directly in a direct message. Excellent, excellent. We created a measure. What's the importance of creating this measure? Let's go and create a pivot table. I click on pivot table. I want to create my pivot table in a new worksheet. Still not working. Store sales, calculate, sum, net sales, channel name. Baba, I don't see any problem with your calculation. If you understand how to create it, delete it and recreate it. Let's create it together one more time. I click on Manage to go back to Power Pivot, and I'm going to create a calculation, let's say, for the reseller channel. I'm selecting another cell, and I want to name it Reseller Sales. $, and I use the calculate function. Calculate, and I hit the tab key. I want to sum the net sales. Sum, and I hit tab, open square bracket, and select the net sales. I close the bracket for the sum function, and then comma. I have a filter in the channel name, then I type CH. I select the channel name, and I type an equal sign. In double quotation, I type reseller. I close the double quote, and I close the bracket for the calculate function. So I created another calculated field or measure for the reseller channel. I hit enter. And I get the result. I want to format it as English, United States. Did it work this time, Baba? Excellent. Let's create one more. What if I want to create a measure without any condition? So let's say I want to calculate the total net sales. I select another cell, and let's name it total net sales. $. This time I don't need a calculate function, I just need a sum function. Then I type sum, and for the sum, I want to sum the net sales. Then I type an opening square bracket, and I select net sales, and I close the bracket. I hit enter. And I format it as English, United States. So I would have created 3 measures: the store sales, the reseller sales, and the total net sales. Now let's see what we did and how it will help us in our analysis. What if I click on pivot table, and let's create a new pivot table in a new worksheet. This time I would like to analyze the store sales for each product category. And I go to the product table and I drag the categories hierarchy to the rows. And then I go to the sales table and this time I want to drag the store sales measure to the values, and I get the total net sales for the stores channel for each one of the categories. Should you wish to drill down, I can click on the plus sign for computers to go to the subcategory level, and these are the net sales amount for the store channel for each one of the subcategories. Should you wish to granularize your data even more, then you can go to the product level. If I click on the plus sign for desktop, then I go to the product level. Do you have any questions? So we finished Power Pivot, and I want to switch to the next add-in, the game changer in Excel, Power Query. So I'm going to close Excel. And I want to bring another Excel exercise folder. So I hover over this icon and bring the pane where I see the resources tab. And I want to bring Power Query this time. I click on the down arrow for the drop list, and this time I want Power Query. In the DVD drive, I see the zipped folder. I double click on it, and then I drag the unzipped folder to the desktop. And now I can close. Were you able to bring the Power Query folder? From this pane, from the Resources tab, you click on the down arrow and you select Power Query. There is a black notification that appears. In my case, it didn't appear. Okay, so if you are not working on the virtual platform, you have a link in the file that I gave you for downloading Power Query folder. You can do that. And by the way, this file is important, the links that I gave you, because after the class, if you want to practice, you won't have access to the virtual lab. So having these files will help you a lot. Yeah. I bring it back and now I'm going to split it. Were you able to bring the Power Query folder, whether you are working on the virtual machine or you are working on your local computer? Okay, let me know when you are ready. Are you ready? So in the previous sessions, we learned about Power Pivot and the data model. And we learned that the data model can accommodate for millions of records, and it allows us to connect multiple sources together. But all that was based on an assumption. We assumed that our data is well structured in the source. But what if our data is not well structured? And most of the time our data is not well structured. So if we have a problem with the data structure itself, then before doing anything, we need to fix this problem. We need to normalize the source and create a normalized data set. And that's the perfect job of Power Query. I want to start with very simple examples, because I can keep teaching you Power Query for a complete week non-stop. We have so many tools. We are just scratching the surface. So let's start with a very simple example. In the Power Query folder, let's open it. And here you will see that I have multiple subfolders. I named each one of the subfolders with a sequential number and my name. So you don't have any excuse if you forget my name. So let's start with the first one, 01 Nabil 1468. Inside the subfolder 01 Nabil 1468, let's select this Excel file, 01 Nabil 1468, start. I don't want to activate, so I close this message bar and I would have opened the file. Did you find the Excel file? Did you open it? Let's select Power Query Get and Transform and have a look at a very simple work situation. In this example, I have some data in two columns. In column A, I have a description. In column B, I have an amount. If you look at the description column, it consists of multiple pieces of information. I have a product, and then I have a date, and then I have a region. 3 pieces of information sharing one single column. Can I analyze this data? No way. In order to analyze, sort, filter, or even create a pivot table, I need to separate the product from the date from the region. Out of this non-structured list, I want to create this analysis. And by the way, this is just a picture. I can drag it, I can move it right and left. It's floating on top of the grid. And for my analysis, the final report should include a month, a product, and then I want the total revenue for each region. How in the world can I create this report out of this data? Can I use regular Excel functionality for doing this? I'm not quite sure. Do you have any ideas, any suggestion for doing this? Do we have advanced Excel users in this class? Oh my God, Eric, text to column. Just text to column. That's wonderful. What else? There is a functionality available on the Data tab of the ribbon, and this functionality will split the single column at the position of the /. We call it text to column, and it's available on the Data tab of the ribbon. Here is the text to column. If I select any value here, text to column is functional. Text to column has some limitations. The first thing, I need to have 3 columns, 3 blank columns to the immediate right of the one that I want to split. That's one thing. Number 2, what if I add more records to the source data later on, having the same exact problem? Text to column, unlike formulas and functions, doesn't refresh, and you have to start your project from scratch. Linda is asking, would we use formulas to extract the data? Yes, we can. I can use a left function to extract the product up to the position of the first space. I can use a right function to extract the region, and then I can extract with the mid function the date. After extracting the date with the mid function, I will have a problem because the mid function is considered a text function. So if I use a mid function to extract the date, it will be left aligned like text, while a date is considered a number. A date is a sequential number counting from the 1st of January 1900. So once you use a mid function, it becomes a text, and you cannot continue using the month or the year or the day function to extract the different parts of a date. In order to analyze my data like this, you will need a month. I need to extract the month. So we need to combine it with other functionality to stimulate the result of the mid function to behave as a number, not as a text. So I'm going to use Power Query to do that. And to use Power Query, I need to convert this list into a table. How do you know, Nabil, that it's a list? Because when I click inside or I click outside, nothing changes in the ribbon. How can you convert this list into a table? There are so many ways. When you watch the tutorial, I gave you the link for the tutorial this morning, you will find out that we have 6 methods for converting a list into a table. The easiest way is to use a shortcut, but this shortcut in the virtual platform will not work properly. It's the most popular way of converting a list into a table. So don't use the shortcut that I'm going to mention right now in the virtual platform. It will work like a charm on your local computer. What's the shortcut? Table starts with letter T, so if you hit Control T, you will be converting this list into a table. But we have another shortcut that will work on the virtual platform, which is pretty similar to this one. List starts with letter L. So if you hit Control L, then the same wizard or the same window opens, and you will realize, although I was selecting one single cell, I'm going to hit cancel. Look at this. I'm selecting one cell, and if you are working locally, use Control T. On the virtual platform, use Control L, and look at this. Did you note what happened here? Did you note that Excel recognized the size of your list? And you know how did Excel know the size of your list? Because we have blank cells all around. And it says, my table has headers. It's a mandatory requirement to have headers. And I do. I have description and amount. My table has headers. I hit OK, and I would have converted my list into a table. Now if you click inside the table, you see the Table Design tab, and I get all the extra functionality that comes with a table. After converting my list into a table, which is a prerequisite for using Power Query, I need to give a nice name to my table. I click in the table name box on the left side of the Table Design tab, and I want to name my table, let's say, improper data. Improper data. And I hit enter for the name to stick. Did you convert your list into a table and named it? Out of curiosity, I have a question for you. This is not an Excel course, a pure Excel course, but I have a question for you. Do you like shortcuts? Look what Linda wrote. Linda wrote the problem, the real problem. She diagnosed the real problem with shortcuts. Can you imagine that I know like 2,000 shortcuts in Excel? Can you imagine? The problem with shortcuts is not to get a printed list of the shortcuts, because if you Google shortcuts in Excel, you will get 1 million results. So that's not the problem, getting a printed list of shortcuts. As Linda said, the problem is to memorize the shortcuts. And there is a technique for memorizing the shortcuts. Would you like to learn how to remember the shortcuts without any effort? Okay, I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to give you a gift right now. This is my YouTube channel, Office Instructor. It's a very popular Excel channel. Through my channel, I'm teaching Excel to hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. Among my tutorials, I have a special tutorial on how to memorize the shortcuts. So let me show you. Okay.
Very tiring. This was hard practice. It's just like the defense.
Why should you use Miro? Well, when you draw on a whiteboard, no one sees it. With Miro, you can plan together in real time from literally everywhere.
What sets the difference between a beginner and an advanced Excel user is the ability to perform tasks by using shortcuts. Besides saving a lot of time, shortcuts give you access to functionality that does not exist on the ribbon. However, the problem with shortcuts is to memorize them. I am Nabil Murad. In this tutorial, I share with you my top 60 favorite shortcuts, broken into 15 categories. I explain them using a mind mapping method to create an association in your mind and help you memorize them with the least effort. So let's dive in. Do you want the link for this tutorial? Here you go. I converted my list into a table. I named the table improper data. Converting your list into a table is a mandatory requirement for using Power Query. So to send my table to Power Query, I go to the Data tab of the ribbon. And maybe in my introduction this morning I talked about add-ins. I talked about multiple add-ins. Among the add-ins, I talked about Power Query and Power Pivot. For Power Pivot, we added an extra tab to activate the add-in, while for Power Query, starting from Office 2016, Microsoft integrated this add-in as a basic functionality into Excel. Prior to Office 2016, you had to download a separate file and then install this file into Excel so that you get the functionality of Power Query. We don't need to do that anymore. Back to Excel. The functionality of Power Query is now available on the Data tab of the ribbon. And what does Power Query do? It cleans and transforms our data. So you will have the functionality in the Get and Transform data group. Get and Transform. Please click on the Data tab of the ribbon. And like Power Pivot, which opens a separate tab on the ribbon, when I open Power Query, it will open in a separate window. Power Pivot opens a separate window on top of Excel, and Power Query will do the same. Please click on From Table Range. When I click on From Table Range, Power Query will open on top of Excel. Let's maximize the Power Query window and explore it. I can see the table coming from Excel, and I can definitely see the problem here in the description column. Up at the top, I have a ribbon functionality, and it's a simple ribbon, but under the hood, I have an incredible power and functionality. I have the Home tab, the Transform tab, the Add Column tab, and the View tab. Many other tabs will appear contextually according to our selection. To the right side, I have a pane called the Query Settings pane. Under the Query Settings, I have two boxes. Which version of Excel are you using? You have it. You have it. It might not be to the very left. So let me close. You might have it not to the very left. If you have Get External Data, you will have it like this. Get and Transform. Am I correct? Did you find it, Eric? This is the older version. It has get and transform, not to the very left, somewhere in the middle. Or you might have the get and transform data to the very left, like the one we have here. But you have read on the data tab of the ribbon, get and transform, anywhere you find it. Sean, get and transform on the data tab of the ribbon. Click on the data tab and search for get and transform. The name of the group is get and transform. No. Get and transform. If you don't have it, then you have an older version of Excel. But most probably you have it because I don't think you are using Office 2010. Oh, 2013. That's the problem. That's a problem. You have to switch to the virtual platform. Then on 2013, you have to download a separate file and then install it. It's a big hassle. So you can switch to the virtual platform for the rest of the course. Yeah, more or less you can. Power Query in Power BI is identical to Power Query in Excel, but you cannot use this one. The step of converting the list into a table must be done in Excel. So my recommendation for you, at least for the remaining few minutes of this session, follow me on screen, and from the next session, switch to the virtual platform. Is that okay? Okay, wonderful. Then I go back and on the data tab of the ribbon, I click on From Table Range to fire up the query editor. This is the query editor. I have the ribbon functionality at the top. This is the table coming from Excel. And on the right-hand side, I have two things. I have the name of the table, and anything I do for fixing the table will be added as a step under Applied Steps. So, because the name of the table, this is the name coming from Excel, and when I finish fixing my data in Power Query, I will send it back. I want when I send it back, it goes back to Excel with a different name so I can differentiate the original improper data from the final proper data. Then I'm going to change the name here by typing proper data. That's the new name. You can name it whatever you want. Proper data. And now I will start using the built-in tools available on the ribbon for fixing my problem. The problem that I have is that in the description column, I have multiple pieces of information sharing the same column. In other terms, the equivalent of text to columns that some of you suggested before is splitting this column into multiple columns. On the Home tab, I have a split column command. On the Transform tab, I have the same command, split column. And if I right-click on the description column, I will have split column as well. All of them have the same submenu. I want to split the column by delimiter. Then I select by delimiter. Power Query identifies the delimiter as a space. and it's not correct. So I want a custom delimiter. So I click on the down arrow where it says space, and I select custom. What's your delimiter? Under custom, I type space / space. So at every occurrence of a space / space, I want to split the column. Look what happens when I hit OK. I want you to keep an eye on the left-hand side where the description column will be split into 3 columns, and then keep the other eye on the applied steps because an extra step will be added here. So please hit OK. Now I have a column for the product, a column for the date, a column for the region, and a column for the amount. I need to do 2 things before sending my data back to Excel. I want to rename these columns, and I want to change the data type. Let's rename the column. So I right-click the first column and select rename, and this should be a product. I want to right-click the next column and rename, and this one should be a date, and then I right-click the next one, rename. There are different ways of renaming. I'm using the most classic technique. This one should be region. And let's rename the last one revenue. I renamed the 4 columns, but I also want to review the data type. Each piece of information has a specific data type assigned to it. If it's not correct, I might have problems when analyzing my data. Where do I see the data type? This little icon to the left side of the name of the field. If you click on it, then it says product is text, which is correct, although I didn't change it. Date is correct. It shows a calendar icon denoting that it's a date. Region has an ABC icon, which is correct, although I didn't do that. Who did it? Power Query did it in this step, change type. This is an automatic step that has been added after splitting the column, and Power Query tries to help me. If you like what Power Query did, then keep it. If I click on renamed column, now I want to change the data type for the revenue. Make sure you are selecting the last one, otherwise you will be inserting a step above it. For the revenue, I want to make it a dollar amount, a monetary amount, so I click on this icon and I select currency. It will put the dollar sign instead of the 1, 2, 3. A step has been added, change type 2, and now I'm ready to send my data back to Excel for analysis with a pivot table. Were you able to fix the problem in Power Query? Okay, let's send our data back to Excel. I go to the Home tab, and we have a button to the left side which consists of an upper and a lower part. Click on the upper part of this button. It will send this table named Proper Data in a new worksheet in Excel, and this new worksheet will be named Proper Data. Click on the upper part of this button. Here is my normalized data set. I have a column for the product, a column for the date, a column for the region, and a column for the revenue, and a new worksheet. It hasn't been named. I don't know why. Maybe it's a problem with versioning. In a newer version of Power Query, this sheet should be named proper data. Just name the table proper data. That's not a recent version of Power Query. Anyway, doesn't make a difference. My goal is to analyze my data and make it look like this. How many records do I have? I have a pane on the right side which says, then you have the newer version. I have it on my laptop, the newer version, but I'm using the virtual platform. The virtual platform is not up to date, but thank you for confirming that you have it. So I have a pane on the right hand side reading queries and connections, and I can see that the proper data query has 365 rows. Let's close it for now. My goal is to create a report that looks like this one, and I'm going to create the same exact report. Let's go to sheet 1 or proper data if you have it named, and let's create a pivot table. To create a pivot table from within Excel, as you already know, I select any single cell, and then I go to the Insert tab of the ribbon, and I click on Pivot Table. I want to create my pivot table in the existing worksheet, then I select Existing, and I select a destination in my worksheet. I hit OK, and here is my pivot table placeholder. The first thing I want to do is to split the date into its components. And I do that by dragging the date to the rows drop area. When I drag the date to the rows drop area, starting from Office 2016, Excel will automatically split the date into its components. I want to keep the month, but not the individual days. And I want to remove date by dragging it out. Look, when I drag it out, I have a deletion symbol hanging to my mouse. I let it go. And I keep only the month. Next, I want to bring the product below the month. I drag the product and drop it below the month. Next, I want to bring the region across the top, and I drag the region to the columns. Finally, I want to bring the revenue to the values, and I drag revenue to the values, and I would have finished creating my pivot table. And someone will say, well, Nabil, it doesn't look at all like the one we want to create. Yeah, I created the pivot table, but I want to fine-tune it. The first thing I want to do for fine-tuning my pivot table and make it look like this one, we have two fields in the rows drop area, month and product. And we don't see them because it's collapsed. So if you select, let's say, the month of April, and then right-click and say I want to expand the entire field by hovering over Expand Collapse and select Expand Entire Field. Now I can see that I have a month and a product. It doesn't make sense to have two fields in one single column. This is one column, and the single column has two fields, month and product. It will be a lot better to separate them into two columns like this. This is the sample. I have the month and the product. How can I separate them? Not only I want to separate them into two columns, but I want to bring the row label and the column label dynamically, although I could type month and region, but I want them to be dynamic, linked to the source data. And all that is done by changing the layout. To change the layout of my pivot table, I go to the Design tab. And to the very left of the Design tab, I click on Report Layout. And I select the third option, Show in Tabular Form. This will split the two fields into two columns and will bring the labels dynamically. Please click on Show in Tabular Form. And I have month, product, and region, and that looks much better. The next thing I want to do, I want to format these numbers. Never ever format the numbers by selecting all the numbers and going to the Home tab and apply whatever formatting. That's wrong. You format the numbers in a pivot table by using tools relevant to pivot table. And I do that by right-clicking and select number format. Don't select format cell, select number format. A variation of the format cell dialog box opens. It has one single tab at the top. Remember that I'm selecting one single number. But because I'm using the proper tools, if I select currency or accounting, and then I hit OK, all the numbers are formatted. So I can continue adding a style and all that. I don't want to spend a longer time on this, but let me show you the beauty of Power Query. When we fix the data and the source data is in the sheet, Power Query Get and Transform, when we fix the data in Power Query, what if I add more records to the bottom of the table? Do I have to repeat all the steps? Not at all. All what you need to do is to refresh your query, because the steps are recorded in sequence. So on this worksheet, if I navigate to the right, I do have some records, and I want to copy these records starting with the top row. I want to copy all the records and put them at the bottom of the table. I select the top row, and then I use the golden shortcut Shift Control down arrow. I then copy, Control C to copy, and then I go to the table, and at the bottom of the table I select the first empty cell. Pasting anything at the bottom of the table makes it part of the table. This is called table auto expansion. So if I paste Control V, now the new records become part of the table. The new records are now part of the table. Let's go to sheet 1, where we have our pivot table. If I close the pivot table fields, and I want to bring the queries and connections, the queries and connections is available on the data tab. Here is queries and connections. It says you have 365 rows. Yeah, 365. That's the original number of records. But I added more records right now. What do I need to do? Refresh the query. So on the data tab, if you click on refresh, Power Query will be processing all the steps of the query. And now you have 481. Has it been reflected on my pivot table? Not yet, because the pivot table has its own refresh option. So for the pivot table, I go to the pivot table analyze tab and I click refresh. And although right now I have April and May only, but when I refresh, I have June and July, and I was able to create the same report that I have in the picture. Here is the report that I was trying to simulate. June and July, and here is the new report, and I finished creating my project. I gave you in this session a quick introduction to Power Query. And I asked you at the beginning of this exercise, how can we solve it? Some of you suggested text to column. Linda suggested using formulas and functions. And these are alternate methods of doing things, although they might not be as efficient as Power Query. However, in the next session, what I'm going to show you cannot be done, impossible to be done without Power Query. Let's take our last break for today, and after the break, big surprises. What can we do with Power Query? Enjoy the break.